Hi, in this video I want to show how to use AngularJS in Drupal, and we'll be writing a Drupal module so that we can use AngularJS, and the data that will be given to AngularJS will be through Drupal Views. So you have a Drupal view that returns JSON data, and our module will read the data and display it in a table. So for that, I'm assuming that you know how to write a module. You would have written at least a hook underscore menu, a module that involves that, and I assume that you know a little bit of AngularJS, that Angular module and controller. That's it, I assume, and let's go ahead and use and see how to use AngularJS. This is a view. It's a simple view where I have two fields from my table, and like the ID and the name, and I return it as JSON data. You get this output if you installed Views data view. Let me show you that module. I have this views here. Here's the module. You need to install this module, views data source. While it allows your views to export data in many other formats, but we'll be using this views JSON. Here's my views JSON. I have enabled this module. So you just need to enable this, and then in your Drupal views you'll be able to see this format, JSON data. You just need to apply this display. Now other things that you can take care in the setting is that you need to give the root object name and the top level child name, and this is what will be used when we repeat in the Angular. So be careful about what you use. The other point I may want to tell is, like, use the simple data format so that you don't get the HTML, you just get the raw JSON data like this, right? So I just go to that particular output, this path, and here's this path, and I load it. I get the raw JSON data. Now to write a module, you know that we just need an info file and a module file. Info file is a simple file where you have this name. I just give it a name and some description, and the important thing is the version and the core. Then you need the reports module. I'll explain these code later. And then you need the JS file. This is the JS file where you have written your Angular, and this is the template file. I'll show the relationship between all these files and how do you write it. After you write your info file, you just go ahead and implement a hook menu. All that you need to do a hook menu is just take the module name, replace the word hook with the module name, and then write this hook where you have this items, and you have this name which is a path. So when you visit this path, this hook is invoked, and it will call back this function. This is the page callback, right? And then the next thing that I'm doing is I'm setting up the argument which says that anybody who has access to content can access this path. Okay, now let's go to this function, which is the page callback, which means that when a user visits this path, this is the function that will be called, and this is where I have defined this function. I've written SD reports camps page. This is the function name. You can probably give a better name. Now the one thing that we need is, when the page loads, we need the AngularJS to load. So you can look into we can use this Drupal add library function and pass these two values here, AngularJS, and it will load the AngularJS library. The way you can see that is, like, I'm going to show you my final output, but before I go there, I just want to show you the page source and explain that your AngularJS is loaded. So I have this AngularJS loaded here. Now to add AngularJS to Drupal, there's a prerequisite which I did not tell. I should tell that now, is that you need to have AngularJS. You need to install the AngularJS module. So you just need to go to AngularJS and download and install this module. I would say that you should go with the developer version because it allows the latest releases to be downloaded and embedded in your Drupal. Next is I think I should show the configuration of the Drupal's AngularJS. We go to configuration AngularJS, and then here you can use the latest version. I'm using 1.5. Version 2 is also there, so you can see the list of all the versions that are there with you, that are available. You can use that. I would recommend that you use the AngularJS CDN and use a development version, not the compressed version, as long as you have this on the developer side. And I have not enabled everything. I've just used the Angular resource and sanitize, and that's all you need to make your Drupal Angular aware. Now getting back to our code, where I included I added this library AngularJS, and I've also shown you that in my code, if I look into the source, I have this Angular resource and Angular sanitize. If you see that these are the two files that I enabled. So in my source, I have these two files coming up. Now if I don't add this line, you will not get the AngularJS enabled. As far as the browser is concerned, it needs an HTML which has this line with the script saying that a JavaScript needs to be there. So for Drupal, we cannot get into the HTML file directly and add the AngularJS, but the way to do it is to call this function Angular add library. Now similarly, I've written my own Angular app in this file sdcam.js. This is my Angular app that I've written. Now even this needs to be called in the HTML page. So the way to do that is you just need to use in your module, you need to say that add JS. Now you can look into this functions that are available in Drupal, look into the Drupal doc. All that it needs is that tell it the path of the JS file. To get the path, I've used Drupal get path function, where you need to say that I'm trying to get a path of a module. So you pass the keyword module here, and then you say that you need this module SD reports. SD reports is my current module. So what Drupal get path will do is it will look for all modules, and it will look for a module name SD report and return the path of it. Now in that module, I have my sdcam.js. Now suppose you have a folder here. So sometimes it is nice to keep a JavaScript into a JS folder. So in that case, you will probably have JS. If you have a JS folder here under which you have the sdcam.js, then you would have to give this path as /js. Well, that's not the case with me, so I wouldn't do that. And then finally, when I have the JS, now I'm calling a theme. Now this is where now adding the Angular JS file doesn't invoke the JS file in your HTML page. I mean, it doesn't use it, it just includes it, right? Now to use that, we'll return a theme. Okay, we'll pass this to a theme function, and that's how I have implemented the hook theme, right? So you know the process that when a visitor visits this page, the hook menu, this path, it will call this page. Now this page is going to add the Angular library and your AngularJS script to your HTML file, and then it will pass it on to a theme. Now you need to implement a theme for your own module. So my module name is SD reports, so I'm implementing hook_theme. In that, I'm making a theme for SDCamps. So you see that this is how you implement a hook theme. Okay, you can look into some examples to understand if you have not used a theme before. But this is very simple. All that you need to do is return an array where you have this template. That's a name value of an array. Template is SDCamps. Now this tells that you need to go to sdcamps.tpl.php file, which is my fourth file. I have the .info, .module, my Angular app.js, and the tpl.php file. Now this is the main tpl.php file. Before I use anything else, I'll just make it simple. Now if my Angular is working, then inside a div tag, if I do an Angular expression, it should evaluate. So I'll just save it, and I'll go back to my code and I'll refresh it. Sometimes you need to just clear the caches, but anyway, sometimes it works without clearing. So you see 1 plus 2, that means this expression of 1 plus 2 is showing up as 3. That means my Angular JS is loading and it's working in this div, right? Now I will explain how that is happening, how the JS is working, and then I'll come back to my template file, right? Info is done, module is done, which calls TPL. But before we get into TPL, I need to explain my Angular app. Okay, my Angular app is a simple app where I call the module function, and the name of my module is my module. This is not the name of my module. Okay, the name of my module is my module, and there are no dependencies. This module is calling a controller, and controller name is my controller. If you just look at the, if you don't know AngularJS, probably one of the first few videos will explain what is a module, what is a controller of an Angular. And then I'm in this controller, I'm using a anonymous function where I pass a scope and HTTP. Now you need HTTP if you're making a HTTP request. Okay, so this is how it is in your controller. This anonymous function, you're using HTTP, and then you say that get, and this is the path of my view, which returns me the JSON data. If you look at this view that I have, if you look at this one, this is the path of my view, and it returns the JSON data. What happens after that? After a successful return, if it is successful, this is what it means. If it is successful, then you need to return a response in the scope that all the data that is retrieved, return it as teams. Okay, I repeat that you have this HTTP which gets the JSON data that is here. Okay, it gets all the JSON data, and then it returns this, gets all the response data and adds it to the scope with the name teams. So this teams is actually now available wherever I call this app. And where do I call my app? I go here, and then I have this controller here. Now how do this controller get loaded here? There's another part. How do we make sure that how do we instruct Drupal to load my app on when it is required? So we'll just use this jQuery ready, jQuery document ready. So when jQuery document is ready, you need to Angular to bootstrap it, and it will take element by ID. Now that means when this page is loaded, right, it so happens that I'll go back to this module. When this path is called, this function is called, right? This function in turns gives it to the theme, right? Now themes will call this SD camps template, right? And here I have given an ID named camp app. Now this camp app makes sure that my Angular app is loaded. How does that happen? I have used the jQuery document when it is ready, that it will get element camp app. When this element is ready, then it will load, it will Angular bootstrap will happen, and which app is loaded? My module. The name of my app is my module.
Go to the camp app console.
So I will just explain once again that this is an ID. Just look at this name. This is get element by ID, and when this TPL file, I have this camp app ID. Okay, so this is a simple CSS ID, nothing Angular here. If you have this ID camp app, so when this page loads with this ID, the jQuery will bootstrap my Angular app, which has this name, my module. So now this controller is available in this TPL file. So I can call that ng controller is my controller. Now in that, I'm just having a table and table header, which will make two header columns, and then I have a table body where I'm using Angular's ng repeat. You would know ng repeat is an Angular's repeat function, which is like a loop. It loops for teams. If you look into my JS code, this is what is passed through the scope. Right now, because my Angular app is available, the teams variable is available in my TPL file. So in that teams I have camps. How do I know in that teams I have camps? Because this is whole thing is teams. In that I have this camps. Now let me show you in a better way of my, not this. See, this whole thing is what is being returned, right? This is what is teams. Let me go to this one. This is what is teams, right? When I go to my TPL file, in the teams I have camps. Let teams.camps means I'm going to this one. That means all the camps will be taken. Under the camps I have camp. So when I go into camps and I loop for each element inside the camp, it means one set of this. This is one set. You see that there's a comma separator here. Then you have another set. This is another set, right? So at one time I'm getting this whole set. When I do teams.camp, I'm getting this whole set, right? That is what I'm passing on to, say, xcamp or any other variable xyz, right? Now to this variable I have these things available, because that the variable has taken this part, one item of the camps, and this is one item of the camps. Within that item of the camps I'm taking this one, so xcamp dot camp. So in this item of xcamp I'm taking a camp dot contact ID or dot team name. So if I do xcamp dot camp dot team name, I get the team name, and xcamp dot camp contact ID, I get the contact ID. Now here's my final result that I get. Where is that? Yes. So if I just refresh it, will I get that? I need to save this
Module.
TPL file. I should clear the caches. Well, it worked without that. Now this is the same result which I got in JSON. You could have got that in a simple table view or table view of the view of a Drupal view. But why are we doing through an AngularJS? Because now we can add more Angular functions to it. Like the way you saw that you have the ng repeat. Now you can add all the Angular functionality in this. Now you will be able to program a view. It is not possible to work on a result that is returned by a view. You can only use the format of it, but now we can loop it, we can add conditions to it, we can do hyperlinks to it, to whatever element. So you are programming on your HTML. You're not programming on the PHP or the Drupal view, which is not possible, but you're programming and looping and adding your conditions in your HTML, and that is why we would want to use AngularJS. And the other point is we used view to return the JSON data because that was one of the simplest way to return JSON data. Now you can write your own code, do your own queries on your own programming on the server side Drupal PHP modules, and return a JSON data, which will be now computed on the browser because you'll be using AngularJS. That's all. If you have any questions, you can post it on the comment.